Excellent. Well, welcome to everyone who is joining us live. If you want to, I'll be checking my phone. So if you want to let me know where you're watching from, that would be fantastic, or let me know that you're watching the replay. I have invited my friend Kelly Newman, who is a personal trainer, and I've invited her to come and talk with us about stress. Okay, because I think that we live in a really crazy time right now. I mean, yes, there's all this extra stress, but underlying that, there's kind of that undercurrent of the stresses that we would normally face anyway. And so when I was talking to Kelly, I had asked her, I said, you know what, is it normal for people to live life with stress? And the short answer is, well, yes, right? There's going to be stresses that come in, and we're going to talk about different places where we'll see stress and then how the body responds to that. But my big thing is it normal for us as women, because we're usually the ones who have the responsibility to figure out food for ourselves, if you're married, for your husband, if you have kids, and then you have to do the shopping, the prepping, the cooking, like everything. And for a lot of us, that just becomes like this low grade chronic stress of just being stressed in the kitchen, and that dreaded 5 o'clock question, what's for dinner, right? And if we don't have that figured out, that can be really stressful, and it can be something that we start thinking about as soon as we get up, right? And if we don't know what's for dinner, then we're thinking, was I supposed to take something out last night? What do I have in the pantry? If I don't have it figured out, will I be ordering out? Like, what's going on? And so that's what I'd really like to dig in today with Kelly as she walks us through some pillars of stress management, what we can do, and how we can serve you as our audience in figuring out how to manage stress and what that would look like for you. So Kelly, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and like how you became a personal trainer and why stress is one of those things that you actually enjoy educating and explaining to women about, like what it is, how it affects them, and then what they can do about that.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you for inviting me to be here, and thank you for opening with that. And yeah, I totally find kitchen stress to be one of the things that is definitely on my mind most of my day, because you're like, I hate that 3 o'clock question of what's for dinner. And I'm like, oh, I don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can relate to that. As a personal trainer, I help clients deal with their stress because it's really important that clients get like their diet and their exercise correct. But what's underneath that big iceberg is more about how they feel within their lives. And when we are kind of chronically stressed, then we're no longer feeling great within our lives. And no amount of diet or exercise is going to help that, correct that, fix that. So as a trainer, I had to start looking farther, or like having a wider perspective on what health and wellness was, because it's not just about the bodies. It's about how we feel within our lives and how good or bad we're feeling on a daily basis.
All right. Well, why don't you take us through some of the background behind like where stress comes from, why we should be looking at it, like why should it concern us, whether we kind of have that stress all the time, or if we're in a stressful environment, why do we need to be concerned about that?
Okay, well, let's I'll share my screen with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to talk about stress management, and one of the pillars of stress management is actually nutrition. And I have 4 pillars that will actually help with stress management, and they all kind of interrelate with the other ones. So like your nutrition will affect your stress, which will also affect your relationships, which will also affect your meditation. But we'll get started. So generally, stress is the feeling of being overwhelmed. If we were to define stress, it's that feeling of being unable to cope with pressure, whether it's emotional or physical or psychological or mental, doesn't matter. It's just the feeling of being overwhelmed. And I find with most women, we deal with a lot of chronic stress or we don't deal with it more specifically. Because I think if I was to ask you, hey, Lisa, how's your stress? You'd be like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yep.
But we're not always fine. And Brene Brown has the best acronym for stress I think I've ever seen. It's I'm fired up, insecure, neurotic, and exhausted, but I'm fine, right? So how is your stress, Lisa?
It's there.
There? Okay.
Today it's not so bad, but
Okay.
it comes and goes. It's sometimes it's like a roller coaster. And there are some times where I feel really stressed and I can start to feel it physically affecting me. A couple of weeks ago, just very stressful situation. And like, I actually felt nauseous and, and I could just, my breathing was up, my heart rate was up. I didn't feel good, kind of felt this headache. And I thought, you know what, I just need to like shut the door and go and have a bath.
Oh, I love it.
I was ready to just close everything out because I could feel I'm on the verge of tears. I can't handle it anymore. That was like high level of stress for me.
Yeah. And I love that you were aware of what was happening within your body, because I think sometimes we miss that. And then we have like stress is a big deal in our world. Like 500,000 employees miss work each week because of stress. The World Health Organization is like stress is the health epidemic of the 21st century. We are raising the first generation of children that is not expected to outlive us due to obesity. Depression is predicted to be the leading cause of disability in 2020. And 1 in 4 women are on anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication. So that's a lot of, it's just our stress is kind of taking over our lives. And we're coping with it the best we can. But sometimes as a society, we're kind of collectively missing the mark. So again, to quote Brene Brown, it's like, we are the most in debt, obese, addicted, medicated adult cohort in history. There's so many things we're doing to take the edge off the stress, but we're not really getting it. And so it's a big deal right now in the world. Mm-hmm. And stress is like our brain responds to stress. It's kind of a automatic response. We can't control whether or not we have a physiological response in our bodies, but chronic stress leads to chronic conditions. Okay. And we don't really get to, it wreaks havoc on our bodies, our minds, our thoughts, our behaviors. Sometimes I feel like we're more controlled by our stress than we are in control of what is in our long-term best interest. So when we are stressed, what happens is the brain signals the body, and then the body releases adrenaline and cortisol. I think most people have probably heard of those as the stress hormones. And then what happens is your heart starts to beat faster, your muscles tense up, just like you were saying, you get like your breathing starts to accelerate. All of this was designed to help us get away from danger. Back in the days when survival was an issue. Survival is no longer like a societal issue. More, we're having to live with problems that are chronic. So if we're chronically stressed, then it leads to chronic conditions. And all those elevated stress hormones and stuff, they kind of wear down things like our immune systems, like our veins and our capillaries. It leads to heart disease, high blood sugar. We kind of get this insulin resistance from being stimulated all the time. Blood pressure goes up. And I think all of us can kind of relate to having that, like when you're stressed, you kind of have like a different peripheral vision. You're like more tuned in or more focused, not necessarily on the big picture, but on like one small aspect. I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I was going to say, I find that when my stress levels are up, I get really irritable.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not the nice person. And I think it's because I become super focused on those few things that I just find really irritating. Right. And it's just like everybody is pushing my button
and that's all you can hear and feel and experience in that moment. And we kind of get locked on with blinders to what we don't like. And that elevates everything internally. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and I know when we were having this conversation, it's like everybody's kind of got a different size of plate or a different window of tolerance for their stress. So we can all tolerate kind of this, like in the middle is called the window of tolerance. This is Daniel Siegel. He did tons and tons of books on brain and emotional awareness and all of that. So he wrote Mindsight and Whole Brain Child. And it's like so the window of tolerance is where we feel okay and we don't feel overwhelmed. As soon as we feel overwhelmed, then we hit the hyper arousal zone. And that's when we have all those heightened senses. And that's when you start to feel your neck and your shoulders tighten up. You feel nauseous. But what happens after that then is our energy plummets and we go down into the hypoarousal zone. Mm-hmm. And that's when we're numb and we're lazy and we're dead, like we're tired. And because having all those like adrenaline, cortisol, like rush through your body, it feels kind of good in the beginning, but then it wears you out. So we're not meant, this happens for us every day, all day on low grades and low levels. The higher the stress, the higher the emotional response, the more we get activated, the lower we're going to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I was just kind of wondering, because I love what you said, like this numbing of emotion and just like being tired, because there's so many times where I'm just like, I'm exhausted. I'm like, why am I even exhausted? I work from home. I don't even have to go out and deal with other people and, deal with driving and trying to manage all of that. Like I have a little bit more time and flexibility, but there are times where I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it. And I was just thinking like, why am I being so lazy? Right? Because I really value like productivity and efficiency. And then I would beat myself up when I'm feeling drained. I'm like, do I need another cup of coffee? Like, how do I get back and go? And coffee's not going to be the answer. Like there needs to be
coffee be another stimulant. So it would give you that immediate pick me up, but then it would drop you down again. Mm-hmm. And like the other thing is, I think with the window of tolerance, how we all kind of got the checkout point in our life. I'll use a nice word for it, but it's kind of like the muck it button. It's like where I no longer care about this. Mm-hmm. And the more we're activated, then we check out. Right. And then the checkout leads to kind of disengagement. And then we no longer kind of act within our own best interest.
Yeah.
It's like if I don't have a plan for dinner and people are on me and it's time, then I'm like, muck it. Am I going for fast? This is what my clients struggle with. Am I going for fast food? Am I throwing what am I putting in the oven? What am I making on this last minute? But when I've been stressed all day, it's like, I no longer care. I just need something quick and easy. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's usually when I tell my kids fend for yourself and they make cereal.
Skinny dinners, we call those. Whenever my husband travels, we call them skinny dinners.
Yeah. And you know what? Like I've been there. I've totally been like that level of apathy of, you know what? I don't care. Like you decide. I think it's decision fatigue for a lot of us. Just that constant, not only do we have to like figure out dinner and kind of pick like for me, I start with the protein. Am I going to have chicken or beef or turkey or like whatever that is? But then I still have to find a recipe. Then I have to figure out if I have the ingredients, and then what's the side going to be? The kids are going to ask for dessert. Like it's all these things coming at us. And I just don't think that people realize, that this is not normal, or even if it is your normal, right? There's something better on the other side.
Yeah. And yes. And sometimes getting a little help to help have a plan that you can just activate then takes care of some of that stress and that questioning around how do I pull this all together? Because stress, in terms of managing and coping with stress, the 4 pillars are exercise, move your body, get rid of those adrenaline and cortisol. If it is in your system, then burn it out physically. Nutrition, that bolsters not just like your stress, but also your body's immune response and healthy weight, healthy living. Connection, other people. We are wired for connection. We need people. And meditation. And meditation is, if physical activity is your ability to move, then meditation is your ability to be still. Mm-hmm. and they're both muscles, and we kind of need to practice both of them. You know, it's okay to kind of go into like first, second, third, fourth gear, but we also have to know how to downshift.
Yeah.
Right.
Like taking a bath for me, that's my meditation time.
Beautiful. And it's great. It's also comfort and relaxing. It's a downshift, right?
Yeah.
So there's this really cool book called Undo It by Dean and Ann Ormish, and they have a lifestyle medicine program in the States. And what they do is they take people who are on, like, who need heart transplants and all these chronic conditions, and they make them follow their nutritional program for 12 weeks. They give them exercise physiologists, and they teach them, and psychologists, and then they reduce these chronic diseases like heart disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, depression. $3 trillion are spent annually in the States on diseases that are largely preventable through healthy living and healthy eating. It was mind blowing when they went into details about like ejection fractals in the heart and like how sick these people's hearts were. Then they put them on their lifestyle medicine program and tracked them. And a lot of these people no longer needed surgeries. It was incredible. I think I missed one. And in terms of life and health and happiness, we can't downplay the importance of relationships. There's this longest ever study on happiness, and they took, I think, 268 Harvard grads from like 1938 to 1944, and they did this 75-year study on them. And so they interviewed these men every year, from everything from their income to their marital status, to their sex lives, to their health. And they went to their houses and they interviewed them in their living rooms, and they drew blood and they did brain scans, and they followed these men and they tracked their health every year. And then at the end of the study, they asked, I think his name was George Valiant, what his take on all this study was. And he said, the most important thing, I have it quoted here, is the only thing that really matters in life are your relationships to other people. And we need a way to cope with life and to deal with our problems that does not push love away. So, close relationships are a buffer for stress. They're also a buffer for dementia and all these other health conditions. The stronger ties we have to people, the healthier and happier we'll be. And I know when I get stressed that sometimes I go to the cookie jar of relating, which is, just things. I know that when I'm stressed, I'm way more quicker to anger. I get snippy, I get short, some of this is okay. Some of this is normal, but I think we all need to be aware of sort of how often we're dipping into the cookie jar.
Yeah. Yep. Something on your list, you need to include like Netflix binges.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. But this is like, I'm like, ooh, yeah. Procrastination. Yeah. And then, the anger, irritability. Irritability is on there. Yeah. And going to food. Right. And just I'll just be, I eat because I'm bored. I eat because I'm procrastinating, right? I want a mouth feel. I'm just, stress eating, right? And, and some people, they crave the sweets, or they want something crunchy. Some people are more savory. It's just, having something and looking, probably part of that too, right? Is trying to get out of the dip, right? And get to that sugar high. Yeah. Right? You don't really see a lot of people stress eating with carrot sticks and celery.
There's no comfort in that.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're stressed, you're wanting something that changes the way you feel, and food will take the edge off the pain. Unhealthy food, addictive food, anything that kind of gives you the dopamine rush, right? But foods that are healthy generally don't have those kind of addictive qualities.
Well, why don't you share what you told me before we got on? And that was, when you had that client who did kind of their meal diary, and how many times that they ate out in a month.
I had a client that, no joke, we did the daily calendar, and I always will ask for a nutrition log, and the client was kind of frustrated. they weren't losing weight. They went out 31 times that month because that was better for them because they used to eat out every dinner and every lunch. But 31 meals, I think over 17 of them were McDonald's. And I was like, okay, we have a starting point.
Yeah.
We have a starting point.
Well, and because it's a quick fix, right? Like I think we are wired to look for the quick fix, right? And I know that in, even as I'm connecting with people, right, that are coming into my community and I'm saying, hey, like, what are you looking for? And most people are saying, I'm looking for inspiration or motivation. I'm looking for some quick and easy and healthy recipes. Right? They want the quick win. Give me a recipe, and somehow that recipe is going to, make a big difference. Now, it might reduce their stress for one day, okay, but without that long-term solution, it's almost like another cookie jar. Like it's a good thing. Like I'm looking for a good recipe, but they're still trying to cope with something that's going to keep bringing them back to the same spot. And so they're just repeating the cycle and not getting rid of it. So my question for you is, like, can we, like, so we've talked about I love the 4 pillars that you have for managing your stress, right? Yeah. Exercise, nutrition, connection, and meditation. Is there hope? Can we get rid of some of the stresses that we have?
I think absolutely you can. And I think one of those things is having a plan, but not just a plan for today. It's a larger scale plan. And sometimes we need somebody to teach us how to string things together correctly, right? Because if you don't have a plan, you kind of plan to fail. And nutrition is one of those things. You need to sit down and you need to have a plan. And you also need to know what you should be doing and why you should be doing it, because then it becomes a habit. And because eventually willpower and motivation are going to fall off and you're going to go back to your habits. And if you don't have healthy habits, or if you haven't integrated them, you're going to go back to do it. You're going to hit the mucket button, Lisa.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's hard. Like,
yeah,
it is sometimes hard to know what you should be eating. It's hard to know what's healthy, what's not healthy, what's in, what's not in, and there's so many different programs out there. So I'm really glad that you are there and that you can help people put it all together, because I know when my clients fall down, that's one of the areas. Nutrition is such a big area in our lives for our physical well-being and our mental.
Yeah. And you know what? A lot of people, we don't know what we don't know.
That's right.
And so, like, one of my clients was saying that as she was going through, I have an online program where I help fill in a lot of those nutritional gaps, right? And a lot of the things that as a woman over 40, right, I didn't get a manual when I got married, when I had kids, when I graduated out of university. I didn't go into nutrition. I went into engineering, which is like opposite, right? And so I didn't have any of this. I didn't know. And you're right. Like there's, every time I go online, like there's the next superfood, there's this next diet. Do you do that? Is it high fat? Is it low fat? Is it, what is it? There's all these questions. And so I ended up going back to culinary nutrition school and learning this. And I thought, you know what? Not everybody has the time or the desire to go back to school or to get certified. And so I boiled everything down. I'm like, okay, this was a wow moment for me. And I need to share that with other women.
Oh,
because
awesome.
Yeah, it made such a difference. And so one of my clients, she was saying, she was going through a module that was talking about, different oils. Okay. Because same thing, there's so many options: coconut oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, and then there's a bunch of other ones too. Right. And so she said, vegetable oil kind of sounded healthy because it's from vegetables. And she's like, I had no idea that it was contributing to my inflammation. And again, like, how are we supposed to know these things? Because the food industry certainly isn't giving us like the real deal, right? They're putting false claims on their packaging, right? They're making it shiny. You know, the funniest thing I've ever seen was a package of sugar that said fat free. Well, yeah, it doesn't have any fat, but the whole thing is sugar, but they want to make it sound healthy.
Yeah,
right? Because that was the trend, right? Fat free. And so even the bag of sugar had that on there. And so that's really what my goal is kind of tackling two of those pillars that you were talking about, the nutrition side and the connection side. And so a lot of the people that we're talking to, they're coming into a community that I'm hoping is one where, you know, it's like-minded people, right? It's women who are already on a journey to wanting to do better, to wanting to have a healthier lifestyle. And again, incorporating, right? I'm more focused on the food and nutrition and cooking, and we do live cooking demonstrations and have some fun in the kitchen, right? But, you know, just to give a sense of camaraderie and say, you know what, you're not alone. These questions that you have, of course we have questions because, you know, there's no manual. So let's learn these things together. And so, yeah, I'm working on creating that community so people know that there's someone that they can talk to. And if they do need that extra accountability and support, someone to say, listen, like, right, like they need, like if someone wants to lose weight and they want to lose it like now, right, they can try on their own, and it, you know, and it might take a year, and they might have lost 5 pounds, and then they get discouraged, and then they gain it back. If they're serious about it, if they're committed to that goal, right, they come to you, they get a personal trainer to help them because they want, like, just tell me what to do. Right? Just tell me what to eat. Just tell me what exercises to do. You've got the plan. I trust you. Totally. I know you're going to get me results. Let's work together. Right?
The accountability piece is huge, and the checking in piece. Just having someone to like monitor you weekly and like talk with, how is the journey going?
Yes.
But it takes commitment. You know, like people have to be ready to commit to it. Yes. And then to have the accountability is priceless.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what I'm offering to my people is that accountability piece where I'm like the personal trainer in the kitchen, right?
I like that.
To do some education component, right? Make sure that we all have that same foundation, and then let's have some fun. Let's go through some recipes, like try some different things. But I think if you know the why something is healthy for you, and then how to cook with it. So my example that I always use is turmeric. Okay, here's this yellow bitter spice that is an amazing anti-inflammatory. So if you're finding that you're getting like sore hands or creaky knees or whatever, turmeric can actually really help with that. But the question is, how do you, unless you want to be eating curry every night, how do you cook with it? How do you incorporate it into different kinds of meals? And, you know, so how do you bring that in? And so that's an example of how we take nutrition and culinary, combine them together so that we understand what the good food is, how to cook it, and how to make it taste delicious, because nobody wants to eat or drink, right? Like a smoothie where you're having to, you know, plug your nose as you drink it, right? Because you know it's healthy.
You'll never stick with it. You will only stick with it if you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because it's forever.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it just to gain the weight back or whatever. So you want to do whatever you're going to do. You got to love it. Otherwise, you'll never stick with it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so I've developed an accountability program where we have weekly check-ins to see where people are going. And you know what? It's so much fun. Like when they're posting pictures, like we did, one of them did, a pantry purge, right? And they took all these before and after pictures, and you know what? And they just felt amazing. And their hubby like saw a difference right away, you know? And so he was encouraging and looking forward to things. And so it's like having a personal cheerleader, you know, someone kind of walking you through the steps. But you're right, it is a commitment, right? My program is a 3-month commitment because I'm working with women who are really busy, right? Who are like, how can I possibly fit this in on top of everything else? Okay. But when it's broken into bite-sized pieces where like, hey, do you have like 20 minutes? Maybe you're driving into town to pick up your kids or going to the grocery store. It's an audio file. Listen to it on your phone, right? While you're washing dishes, just listen to the learning lesson, right? You can fit it into those pockets of time. So really we're looking at like, and maybe 1 to 2 hours, and that's including watching the cooking videos and incorporating some of the homework components for your meal, right? I think it really is available to everyone, no matter what schedule that they have. But like you said, you have to be committed to it because you're going to get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure like same thing for you. There might be someone who's like, I'm ready to slap down some money and like transform my body. Like you do it.
Yeah.
Like I'm waiting for the results. Right. But they're the ones who have to sweat through it or, come up with with their meals and everything. And so same thing. People have to be at that point where they're ready to commit to it, but they could really use that accountability. Like I know for me, if I don't have that, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to come up with excuses and I'm going to procrastinate and I'm going to dream a big dream and I can like see myself in 3 months or in a year, but I have no way to bridge the gap between where I am now and that future self. And so I think for both of us, right, as personal trainers, that we are like, we help people to figure out what the planks are to create that bridge between those two selves, right? And we know the order, right? Like, like what is like, what are those foundational pieces that have to happen? Because if you get the planks out of order, like there's going to be gaps, right? And it's going to be harder to actually walk across the bridge. But, you and I both provide the method and the plan in order to get people to succeed, in order to see their future self. And so I think it's really great that that there are people available, right, who are willing to serve others, who've kind of gone before. Like you've put in your time, right? You've done the education part, you've done the coaching certification, right? All of these things to get you to where you're at, so that you can help people compassionately, in a timely manner, and really be able to give them what they need. And so I'm just so glad that there's opportunities for us to talk about this, to let people know that there's hope, right? They don't have to stay at this low grade stress, or maybe, maybe for some, like it's a higher grade stress, right? Especially in the craziness that we live in today, right? Who knows if the kids are going to stay in school, right? Who knows if, we're able to return to work, like whatever it is, there's all of these unknowns, which just adds to it. And yet I do think that there is a plan to at least focus on and reduce stress in the kitchen. And it's like what you said, having a long-term plan, not just having the quick fixes. So for some people, maybe they just need to sit down on an afternoon and make a meal plan, right? Figure out their shopping list, write down what meals that they need for the week. Okay. And if people don't know how to do that, that's where I come in. I can help them. I can teach them those skills. And for other people, they need the accountability in order to stick to the plan, because that's a whole other thing. Like I might have a plan and it's there on paper, but am I doing the plan? Right?
Sometimes we need something outside of ourselves so that we actually follow up.
Yeah.
I need someone checking my homework, Lisa. I do.
Yeah.
I totally do.
Yeah. And you know what? And it's so encouraging, right? When like, if, to hear someone like, you can do it. Like, you're doing awesome. Like, keep it up. Okay. You had a bad week this week. That's okay. Like, just do better today, do better tomorrow, and keep going. So, so I'm just really encouraged to have this conversation with you. So I thank you for walking us through kind of physically what goes on in our bodies and how, and I love that window of tolerance, and I likened it to a plate, and how some of us have smaller plates, right? And so they overfill. And so we just need to have that self-awareness of how big our plate is, right? And what we're able to do, and then kind of start seeing, you know, the physical, just the physical reactions, right, to having stress in our life and knowing, okay, am I reaching into that cookie jar of copain? Right?
You're already too late. If you've taken the cookie jar, you've already missed your physiological responses in your body. But that's kind of like, that's a behavior of, oh my God, my stress is up here.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because you're right. We have to connect into our bodies, into how we're feeling. And just to become aware of it is the first step to change it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have to like watch, like, where's my stress today?
You know what? And that's a good question. Maybe we'll follow up with that. Where's my stress level? And people can kind of start gauging, right? And putting it on a scale. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to follow up in our group with where's your stress at? And for people who are high stress, I'll make sure that I tag them into this video so that they can learn a little bit more about that and have the hope that if they want the help, it is available and that there is help and there is hope. So thanks so much for joining us today, Kelly. I've learned a lot. I have notes here and I'm ready to share it with everybody else. So everybody who joined us, whether live or on the replay, thank you so much. I hope you got something out of it. Leave a comment, let us know what you think. And if you like this, I will continue to look for ways to support, encourage, and motivate you to have some more love in the kitchen. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Lisa.